Okay. After much resistance, um, I succeeded to um, start a new project. This project is very dear to me because it's very spiritual in nature. The author, C.S. Lewis, wrote this book, The Screwtape Letters, and it is a story of a demon. This demon, we can also call it a not I, because it's not you, it's not me. And these demons were made so they will torment the life out of us. And C.S. Lewis wrote this book about these not I's, or these demons. And um, I want to read it to you, because it is a demon teaching his nephew how to torment a human being. Okay. The Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis. I have a lot of resistance for some reason with this book. Everything I tried, nothing works. It's like it knows that I'm dealing with the demons. It's gonna take a while for it to open now, because that's how resistance works, I guess. I'm opening it up in iBooks, and then as soon as it opens, I'll read it. Okay, The Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis. Remember, Screwtape is a demon, or a not I, because it's not you, but they live inside of you or around you. And we each have 6 families of these demons. Also, for your information, all my narrations I post up on my podcasts and on YouTube and on my social media at anatalos.com. Preface. To J.R.R. Tolkien. The best way to drive out the devil, if he will not yield to text of scripture, is to jeer and flout him, for he cannot bear scorn. Luther. The devil, the proud spirit, cannot endure to be mocked. Thomas More. I have no intention of explaining how the correspondence which I now offer to the public fell into my hands. There are 2 equal and opposite errors into which our race can fall about the devils. One is to disbelieve in their existence. The other is to believe and to feel an excessive and unhealthy interest in them. They themselves are equally pleased by both errors, and hail a materialist or magician with the same delight. The sort of script which is used in this book can be very easily obtained by anyone who has once learned the knack, but disposed or excitable people who might make a bad use of it shall not learn it from me. Readers are advised to remember that the devil is a liar. Not everything that Screwtape says should be assumed to be true, even from his own angle. I have made no attempt to identify any of the human beings mentioned in the letters, but I think it very unlikely that the portraits, say, of F.R. Sprague or the patient's mother, are wholly just. There is wishful thinking in hell as well as on earth. In conclusion, I ought to add that no effort has been made to clear up the chronology of the letters. Number 17 appears to have been composed before rationing became serious, but in general, the diabolical method of dating seems to bear no relation to terrestrial time, and I have not attempted to reproduce it. The history of the European war, except it insofar as it happens now, and then to impinge upon the spiritual condition of the human being, was obviously of no interest to Screwtape. C.S. Lewis, Magdalene College, July 5th, 1941. Chapter 1. My dear Wormwood, I know what you say about guiding our patient's reading and taking care that he sees a good deal of his materialistic friend. But are you not being a trifle naive? It sounds as if you supposed that argument was the way to keep him out of the enemy's clutches. That might have been so if he had lived a few centuries earlier. At that time, the humans still knew pretty well when a thing was proved and when it was not, and if it was proved, they really believed it. They still connected thinking with doing, and were prepared to alter their way of life as the result of a chain of reasoning. But what with a weekly press and other such weapons, we have largely altered that. Your man has been accustomed, ever since he was a boy, to have a dozen incompatible philosophies dancing about together inside his head. He doesn't think of doctrines as primarily true or false, but as academic or practical, outworn or contemporary, conventional or ruthless. Jargon, not argument, is your best ally in keeping him from the church. Don't waste time trying to make him think that materialism is true. Make him think it is strong, or stark, or courageous, that it is the philosophy of the future. That's the sort of thing he cares about. The trouble about argument is that he moves the whole struggle into the enemy's own ground. He can argue too, whereas in really practical propaganda of the kind, I am suggesting he has been shown for centuries to be greatly inferior of our Father below. By the very act of arguing, you awake the patient's reason, and once it is awake, you can foresee the result? Who can foresee the result? Even if a particular train of thought can be twisted so as to end in our favor, you will find that you have been strengthening in your patients the fatal habit of attending to universal issues and withdrawing his attention from the stream of immediate sense of experiences. Your business is to fix his attention on the stream. Teach him to call it real life, and don't let him ask what he means by real. Remember, he is not like you, a pure spirit, never having been a human. Oh, that abominable advantage of the enemies. You don't realize how enslaved they are to the pressure of the ordinary. I once had a patient, a sound atheist, who used to read in the British Museum. One day, as he sat reading, I saw a train of thought in his mind beginning to go the wrong way. The enemy, of course, was at his elbow in a moment. Before I knew where I was, I saw my 20 years' work beginning to totter. If I had lost my head and began to attempt a defense by argument, I should have been undone. But I was not such a fool. I struck instantly at the part of the man which I had best under my control, and suggested that it was just about time he had some lunch. The enemy presumably made the counter-suggestion. You know how one can never quite overhear what he says to them. That this was more important than lunch. At least, I think that must have been his line, for when I said, "Quite," in fact, much too important to tackle in the end of a morning, the patient brightened up considerably, and by the time I had added, "Much better come back after lunch and go into it with a fresh mind," he was already halfway to the door. Once he was in the street, the battle was won. I showed him a newsboy shouting the midday paper, and a number 73 bus going past, and before he reached the bottom of the steps, I had got into him an unalterable conviction that whatever odd ideas might come into a man's head when he was shut up alone with his books, a healthy dose of real life, by which he meant the bus and the newsboy, was enough to show him that all that sort of thing just couldn't be true. He knew he'd had a narrow escape, and in later years was fond of talking about that inarticulate sense for actuality, which is our ultimate safeguard against the aberrations of mere logic. He is now safe in our Father's house. You begin to see the point? Thanks to processes which we set at work in them centuries ago, they find it all but impossible to believe in the unfamiliar while the familiar is before their eyes. Keep pressing home on him the ordinaries of things. Above all, do not attempt to use science, I mean the real sciences, as a defense against Christianity. They will positively encourage him to think about realities he can't touch and see. There have been sad cases among the modern physicists. If he must dabble in science, keep him on economics and sociology. Don't let him get away from that invaluable life lesson. Invaluable real life. But the best of all is to let him read no science, but to give him a grand general idea that he knows it all, and that everything he happens to have picked up in casual talk and reading is the result of modern investigation. Do remember, you are there to fuddle him. From the way some of you young friends talk, anyone would suppose it was our job to teach. Your affectionate Uncle Screwtape. This is the end of chapter 1 in the Screwtape letters, and I love to find out how these little demons, these little knot eyes work. And it would be very interesting to discover, how did C.S. Lewis come to write this? And to write it in the form of a letter. It's not even in a journal form. It's very intelligent the way that he put it together. Letters from a demon, or not I, to his grandson to teach him how to torment a human being. So after much resistance, I finally achieved to read the first chapter. And I will also read it in Romanian, because why not? I speak Romanian. So I will be back and I will talk Romanian.